What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked In Sports Podcast. I'm William Locke, and joining us today for our 2025 Philadelphia Phillies season preview is the Philly sports fan extraordinaire, Mr. Josh Doering. Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing great, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
My guy Josh is an elite ball knower. We date back. One of William's roommates from college. I remember having intense, great debate with Josh.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I said, like out in Fenwick 410, just an elite
Fairview 410.
Sorry, I confused.
Yeah, we've definitely had our fair share of leveled sports conversations. A lot of soccer. I mean, everything. I mean, freshman year we were playing 2K. We had our roommates had a 24-hour NBA 2K marathon.
That's right.
Talk more sports with Doring than probably most people in my life. So really excited to talk some Phillies today. You're coming off the high of the Eagles Super Bowl. So, I mean, let's start there. Tell me about that. Your second Super Bowl in 6 years. Is the expectation or the pressure on the Phillies maybe a little bit less coming off of that Eagles high?
I definitely feel that way. This one will absolutely last me for a while. I wanted that one real bad. I'm not gonna lie. Just to stop the three-peat with everything that happened and the weird way in which that team operates, but they make it work, and this idea that nobody can beat Mahomes and all of that kind of stuff. That I wanted it. If a team was going to win a championship from Philly, they would be at the bottom of my list. I would much rather have it be the Phillies, but that combination of being able to stop the three-peat and that one was one of the better sports experiences. Definitely not number one. That will forever and always be Lester. But that one's up there in terms of my favorite sports memories for sure. The way that they did it, the fact that Cooper DeJean had a pick six, all of it was just the perfect script that I could have written it any better. So if the Phillies don't win this year, life will go on.
Yeah, and off to that point, I mean, it sounds like you would have rather had lost a Super Bowl to the Cowboys than to the Chiefs. You know, I know it hurts, but 100%.
I don't know if I'm going quite that far, but getting pretty close.
Yeah, and you know, with the whole Chiefs narrative is like that they won all these like one-score games, that it was pretty like nuts that, you know, a team to be that, I don't want to say lucky, but there has to be some luck when that happens. But in regards, one thing we can carry over into Philadelphia with the Union, the Phillies, the Sixers, and the Eagles is they're all well-managed teams, and well-managed teams build winners. I know the Sixers are struggling this year, but they have the ingredients to put it together.
They might be one of the bleakest situations in the NBA right now. If we're being completely honest.
But they got Embiid. Embiid, if he's healthy, top 5 player in the game. Tyrese Maxey is elite. Paul George, I mean, hasn't been healthy, but he's still a premier two-way wing player, and those don't grow on trees. And then you had a great draft pick again in Jared McCain, just like the Eagles drafting Cooper DeJean and Guantanamo Bay and Quinion Mitchell. So, and taking players like Zach Bond from the Saints, who was a special teamer and now a middle linebacker. And then you got the Union scouting out Kevin Sullivan, who's probably the poster child for U.S. soccer for the next 10 to 15 years.
Let's hope so.
Hopefully.
And that brings us to the Phillies, a team that has been in it for the past couple of years. They have talent. They go out and make big moves, led by Dave Dombrowski. He's not afraid to go make that splash and go nuke the farm, as he always has done with the Tigers and Red Sox. And so he builds consistent winners. And with that, I'm going to introduce you your 2025 Philadelphia Phillies. At shortstop, Trey Turner. He's going to be back. Kyle Schwarber's DHing, one of the best power bats in the game. Bryce Harper at first, who made some interesting comments today, which we'll bring up later in the podcast. Third base, Alec Boehm, a guy who, you know, was booed by Phillies fans in Philadelphia, but has quietly resurged and hasn't been deterred by the trade rumors this offseason. Then you got Mr. Nicholas Castellanos, Max Kepler, very popular acquisition that happened this year, December. Very popular name for the Yankees in Yankee Twitter.
Yeah, everybody's popular in Yankees, right? I see everybody getting linked with the Yankees with the aggregator accounts that the Yankee fan base has.
the aggregators and the jersey edits. One day it's Fernando Tatis, the next day is Busa Reyes and everything. But we'll get to the Yankees in a future pod. Catching JT Realmuto, Bryson Stott, who I think is very underrated at second, and then Brandon Marsh at center, an elite defender at center field. Guys of note, they have Johan Rojas, who we watched in the Dominican World Series. Very interesting if you kept up with that. And then Edmundo Sosa also in the infield. Rotation, one of the elite rotations in the game with Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, who's had really good positive returns in spring with his pitches and repertoire, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, and of course they pillaged the Marlins again for another player in Jesus Luzardo after they took away JT Realmuto. In the pen, they're headlined by Jordan Romano, who's coming over from Toronto to close, as Jeff Hoffman has been signed by Toronto. They got Matt Strom, who was really good last year as well. Jose Alvarado throws flames. Joe Ross, another long reliever type of guy, come over from Milwaukee. And then they have T1 Walker. So, Mr. Josh, how are we feeling this year? This team went 95-67. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's more or less the same team, which isn't necessarily a bad thing from my perspective, because that team last year went 80, 85, 90% of the season battling the Dodgers for the best record in baseball. So that's a pretty good starting point. And yes, it's a year older, but I'm not super concerned about that part of it. My biggest concern is I just don't know where they got better. And you kind of mentioned this, Luis, that every year as they've started to build this thing, there has been the marquee acquisition or the investment in re-signing an Aaron Nola and things like that, where you go, okay, this is the next step. This is the next step. They're continuing to build on what was already there, that it was never good enough. And then you kind of get to this point, and yeah, you swapped out some bullpen pieces. I would rather have Jeff Hoffman. Jeff Hoffman was really good last year. I was disappointed they couldn't make that happen. Estevez was a, trade deadline piece to try and get back to a World Series that I'm not super concerned about. So I still feel very good. It's just, you look at what the Dodgers have done, you look at what the Mets have done. Theoretically, Atlanta is going to be much healthier and better this season. And so I could easily see a world where they're a top 5 team in baseball and finish third in their own division. I also don't think it's out of the question that they go battle the Dodgers if the Dodgers don't stay completely healthy. So I feel good. I just don't necessarily think that they're one of the best 1 or 2 teams in baseball.
Yeah, it's an interesting season for you guys this year, because you've had kind of 3 straight years of heartbreak, losing the World Series in 6. Then you follow that up. I think probably 23 was the most heartbreaking.
Without question.
I mean, you're winning the World Series that year if you beat the Diamondbacks, in my opinion.
Agreed.
And then last year you lose to the freaking oh my god Mets. Yeah, you had Craig Kimbrell in 23, which having him in the back half of the bullpen, I don't know if you can win a World Series with him.
Right.
But that one had to hurt.
That's the thing. What I was going to say, it's like going off Josh's point. I think every year all these teams have flaws. Like in that 23 team, me and William, how much did we talk about Kimbrell being a liability?
Yep, that bullpen wasn't good enough. Yep.
And then what happened last year? They had Matt Strom, Jeff Hoffman, Carlos Estevez. So what like you said, what did they do this year? And William, you can take that away right there.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's baseball. Like, it's just a weird sport. There's no rhyme or reason to some of this stuff. But even with the weak bullpen in 23, I think you'd much rather play the Rangers in the World Series than the 2024 Yankees. And the Yankees, I know it was 4-1, but the Yankees were in most of those games. Like it could have been a more of a series. So I think this year, like you said, it's kind of basically the same team. But I think an interesting point is you got a lot of free agents. You got a lot of dudes on contract years. Korber, he's going to be gone after this year, or at least he's going to be a free agent. JT, free agent. Max Kepler, and then Jordan Romano, 2 guys you brought in. And then Ranger Suarez. So you got guys playing for some deals. You kind of got some guys that are not necessarily on the wrong side of 30, but they're getting a little up there in age. Bryce Harper's 30, going to be 33 this season. Schwarber, 32. I feel like he's been in the league forever, ever dating back to the Cubs. So it's kind of just a question of, can these guys continue to produce? I think they can. I feel better about them than some of the guys like Boston's relying on. These are proven stars in the league. Trey Turner, can he put it together for the course of a whole season? Like, I feel like he's either one half and then he just falls off every single year with Trey Turner, or, starts cold and then finishes strong. Big thing for me, you got to have Nick Castellanos have a bounce back season. Yep. If Nick Castellanos is firing, and I'll say, with everything going on in the world right now, I think he's due for a career year. I think it's going to be a big year for Nick Castellanos. But if he's not playing well, that contract is not pretty for the Phillies. So I think he's an X factor for you guys this year.
Yeah, those are the two, thinking about kind of what's going to determine what the floor is, what the ceiling is. To me, it's Castellanos and it's Max Kepler, because Kepler is the one piece that you can point to and go, okay, that could hypothetically be an improvement. Yes, he's injury prone. He seems to be very hot and then very cold, like Trey Turner has been as a Philly, which, and I'm sure we'll get to a postseason conversation later. I feel a little bit differently about that when it comes to the postseason, but that's not necessarily what you want in order to try and increase your regular season win total. Mm-hmm. But if he has a great season on a kind of prove me contract here, that could be a potential upgrade. If you get all-star Nick Castellanos back, that's a significant upgrade. So that's where I'm looking at kind of the potential for the improvement, because I just don't see it coming from the pitching staff. The pitching staff's going to be really good. The rotation's really good. I don't have concerns there, but where could you actually hypothetically get better? To me, it's those two guys.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was going to bring up. Y'all are deep rotation-wise this year.
Rotation's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Like top five. I know I'm throwing this loosely in like multiple podcasts before, but y'all have 7. You have 8 starters damn near, with Wheeler, Sanchez, Nola, Suarez, Luzardo. Walker is probably a lot of teams 3-4 guy, maybe even 2. And then you have Andrew Painter, should be up this year also. So, I mean, like, the war chest is there. And, I would just like to say, what do you think about the Jesus Luzardo trade?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that you can never have enough starting pitching. It gets a little bit different conversation when you condense your rotation in the playoffs. But I mean, look at the Dodgers have at least as many that are higher profile, for the most part, higher profile names, where I don't even know how all these guys are going to start, because they're all all-star caliber and there are more than 5 of them. So, and especially the back end of that rotation, you can always potentially upgrade. It's not like they have 5, lights out number 1 or number 2 guys. So if Luzardo's good, fantastic. If it doesn't work out, then like you said, there are other options. Hopefully Painter brings himself into that conversation at some point this season too. So I feel very good about the rotation. I feel good about being able to match up at the top end as well. Maybe not in the number 2 spot. Christopher Sanchez didn't have granted, there wasn't much of a postseason to dissect anyway, but what you're going to get from Zach Wheeler, what you're going to get from Aaron Nola, and that's half the battle right there, is just having 2 guys that you can really trust that are going to produce for you, give you 160, however many, 180, whatever it might be, innings, going to show up every 5th day, start, and you trust him in the postseason. So that part of it I feel really good about.
Yeah, and there's always the question with health that you just can't predict. Right. But getting the rotation depth is huge. And hey, if Max Kepler doesn't work out, I think he's on a 1-year deal. You got the rotation depth. If you really want to go out and get an outfielder, like, you have the assets to do so. I mean, Andrew Painter a couple years ago was the number 1 pitching prospect in the entire sport, and he got Tommy John. So I feel like he's kind of fallen off the radar of the general baseball, conversation. But he still can be a really high end guy. He's going to be on an innings limit this year. I think I saw they floated out like 100 innings for him. So he's not going to be a huge contributor. But he's a guy that, hey, if he comes up, Max Kepler struggles and Painter's throwing consistent innings in the major leagues, you can go out and get like a Luis Robert at the trade deadline with that.
Or you want me to pose 2? I actually have the perfect thing. I have 3 things, 3 guys I'm going to post up to you, Josh, and William also chime in. I could see in the world as we see, a lot of these trades are relationship games. in the sense that GMs have prior existing relationships. And you see that Marlins and Phillies have had trades. You can call up Miami and get Sandy Alcantara, who's on an innings limit because they want to have him till October. That's one guy. Number two, say the Angels flame out, Mike Trout. You call up and go get Mike Trout.
It's been,
and
I mean, been forever that he's been linked with the Phillies. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, and you have all that money coming off the books. And then finally, I don't know if you guys saw, I know I sent it to William this morning, that Bryce Harper made out the comment that said he would be open to moving into the outfield to free up somebody at first. So what that sounds like, with all this money coming off the books, Vlad Guerrero, you call up Toronto and be like, hey, we'll give you an Andrew Painter for Vlad Guerrero. And then you add a Vlad Guerrero to Philadelphia. They're going to have the money with the Schwarber deal coming off. And, I mean, they could move Castellanos in theory. They would have to eat money. But, hey, bats are needed. And, you know, if you get Cincinnati, Castellanos, what do y'all think? And it's Dombrowski. He's not afraid to make moves.
Right. Yeah. And the other part of that, too, is if this is the last season of Schwarber, that also opens up the DH spot to potentially do some because part of what Harper said was, I asked about Pete Alonso and say, can we see what we could do about that? And obviously it didn't happen, but the idea being he would move back to the outfield if there's I think his quote was something like, if there was a 35 to 40 homer guy at first base, then let's go get him and I'll move back to the outfield. But maybe it's some combination of he plays some first, he plays some right field, and he DHs if Schwarber's not there after the season. So I do. And just because we live in a world of the Dodgers, I will always feel like there's one more piece that's needed. Mm-hmm. So whether that's getting another big time starter, don't necessarily think it's needed, but that's certainly never a bad thing. Or that's kind of the next step for me is, what is the next iteration of this look like? Because it's not Schwarber, Castellanos, Real Muto. It's going to be Harper, because Harper's not going anywhere. Harper said he wanted to play until he was 42 or something like that. Past his contract, which isn't even halfway done yet. So he's not going anywhere. Trey Turner's going to be around for a while, but the pitching staff is, at least in the top end, pretty set for a few years. But what is the next? That is kind of an interesting storyline of this season going into the offseason, and how does this postseason go if they make it too? Do you try and get some kind of short-term agreements with some of these guys to run it back one more time, or is Dombrowski operating from the very beginning of the season that this is the last go with this team? And there's going to be a major retooling, because they're always in the conversation for the big names, the high profile free agents, which from my perspective as a fan, that's all you can ask for, is be willing to spend the money, see what you can do to make your team better. And obviously Dombrowski has no problem doing that. So I think those are all interesting options. I would be all for any of them, and we'll just kind of have to see. But Harper being flexible like that, he clearly wants more pieces and is going to do what he can to make that happen, which was cool to hear him be so vocal about that.
Rank them. Both of you. Rank them.
I'll go. I would say one would be Vlad. I mean, the youngest, that's a long-term deal. You get him 10, 15 years, whatever. And once Harper, I mean, if Harper wants to play till he's 42, that's 10 more seasons. But once Harper eventually retires, he's probably still going to be your guy. Two, who's the other hitter you mentioned?
Trout and Sandy.
Yeah, Trout. I would probably put Sandy too, because he could be like your pitcher long term once Wheeler maybe fizzles out a little bit, because he's like 35. And then three, I would say Trout, just because it's kind of another aging contract, big money guy. Yes, we're probably disrespecting Mike Trout when I say that, because he's just been hurt, but he is mid 30s, whatever at this point. Like, he's only got so many years left, and he's got a big contract.
Yeah, I would have the same order. And just are we ever going to get 140 game all-star Mike Trout ever again? Much less best player in baseball, arguably. Mike, I would take the reliable starting pitcher, and Guerrero number one, definitely, because he's super young, already one of the best. That's a foundational piece that you go, okay, that's one of our building blocks moving forward to a championship caliber team. So I'm right there with you, William.
And I don't know, I just get that feeling that I just see it happening. I like every team that Vladdy's been linked with, like he's linked with Boston. We've been ad nauseum at what's going on in Boston. The Mets, it's kind of like you have is Cohen going to spend more? Because there's Pete, there's Vientos, there's Juan Soto, who is inevitably going to be the DH at some point. Like, there's question mark there that it's just like playing matchmaker is difficult. And then with the Yankees, he's had those negative comments against the Yankees. And
Hal's not spending that kind of money. Come on. We got to stay under the luxury tax.
Yeah, well, yeah, you got to stay under 301, which I think is crazy because look at the team that Dombrowski has built. Their estimated payroll for this year in 2025 is 288, and the Yankees are floating around 300. And I think we would both agree, all of us would collectively agree, that top to bottom, the Phillies roster is better than the Yankees.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think a lot of that has to do with the way Harper's deal was structured. He's something like the 40s or 50s? It was in that Athletic article. 40 or 50 from an AAV standpoint, he's the 40 or 50th most expensive player in baseball this season because it was spread out over such a long time, and it's nothing near Soto's contract. So I was thrilled when I saw those numbers because, yeah, he's getting paid a lot, and it's forever in terms of the contract, but it's not a salary, a luxury tax, a salary destroyer like some of these other contracts could potentially be.
And honestly, Harper's a guy that doesn't scare me paying him when he's in his late 30s. Like, I just feel like he's always going to be good.
He's an elite bat, and he has the personality to do it. I mean, that's also, too, you have the personality. He fits Philadelphia. He fits these, like, big markets in the spotlight. And, I mean.
That was Cashman's biggest miss by far in free agency.
And Machado. Both of them were twerking to go to the Yankees. Like
Harper like clearly wanted, and he was kind of like pissed off that the Yankees didn't even really go after him. Ugh, still hurts.
Well, I mean, hey, you can always fulfill the Yankee Twitter Kyle Schwarber pipe dream next offseason.
No.
Yes.
No, I don't.
Yes, hitting those long balls out to the short porch. Whew.
Hey, we'll trade you Giancarlo Stanton to fill in your DH spot next year if you want.
Hey, I just feel like the Phillies are so well managed. Like they have the money to go make a big move, like take a big swing. Like let's say the Cubs season goes left, they can go get Kyle Tucker, and they can take that risk. That would be a great
addition. Yeah,
they take that risk because they're going to have the money to offer in the offseason.
Yep.
So I mean that's the biggest point. And you have a ridiculous farm system that I don't think we've talked enough with Andrew Painter. They have Carl Crawford's son, Justin Crawford, who's I like as a prospect, Aiden Miller, and then a guy who's kind of fallen off but still pretty damn good is Mick Abel. So
yeah. They're like you said, they're a well-run organization. I think they're going to, it feels like it's a little bit of a turning point season, maybe in the direction of the franchise, just with all the free agents they have, like key guys that are going to be free agents this offseason. But I trust them to get it right this offseason, even if, maybe they don't spend the most money amongst like the Dodgers, although the Dodgers might not have as busy of an offseason next year. So maybe they'll be in the market. Like the Mets have this love affair with Pete to where I feel like he's not like Vlad's not going to go to the Mets. He's not going to go to the Yankees. And then the Red Sox, who knows? Like if he's deciding between the Red Sox and the Phillies, like still feel like the Phillies are a better team right now. And freaking Bryce Harper and Vlad would be just insane together for the next 15 years.
And the Kyle Tucker thing is interesting too, because that's your plug and play option in right field where you don't have to move Harper, but also get that significant upgrade, that foundational piece for the next era moving forward of whatever this team is going to look like.
You also forget that the Dodgers are going to get Murakami because that's just like like that's just
that's happening. Yeah,
that's happening. But like we're getting too caught up in the future of this team. I know we've got on nauseum. Josh, you like the roster? Grade it from A to F. This going into the season.
I would say A-.
A-. Okay. How would you grade it?
I would give it a solid A- too. I'm curious. Let's do like we did this with Boston in the American League. I'm curious how you think like their units stack up with the rest of the East. So let's take the Phillies lineup, the top three of these. We don't need to talk about the Nationals and the Marlins. They're not going to be there.
Whoa. You're going to disrespect my hometown Miami Marlins? I
am. Unfortunately, am.
They have Sandy Alcantara for opening day with Luis Fonsi and Flo Rida with Dan Marino throwing our opening pitch. Like, you cannot disrespect this team that's putting Sandy Alcantara on an innings limit. Because they want to trade him. so he can go pitch for another team in October.
Yeah, it's sad. All right, Phillies lineup versus, we'll say Mets first.
See, I still think I'll take the Phillies.
Oh, me too. Every day of the week.
That's no hesitation. I'm not a big fan of the Mets. Oh my God, Mets. Well, they're not. Oh my God, that's the oh my God Padres now.
Yeah. Phillies, Braves lineup. Tough one.
Yeah, I would probably go with Atlanta just because I feel like there are more pieces that I trust there in terms of I think there's more upside for the Phillies roster if Castellanos is good and if Schwarber's really good again and if Alec Bohm is really good again. But I don't have as many ifs with Atlanta, so I'll go Atlanta barely.
I think I would right now without Acuna, I would lean Phillies, but when Acuna comes back, I'm taking Atlanta. Like I think Austin Riley's going to have a bounce back season, and I kind of trust guys like Ozzie Albies more than Bryson Stott. Yep. So
and that's where I disagree because I actually will take the Phillies lineup. I believe in Bryce Harper. We don't know how Acuna is going to be. He had a tough year last year. Of course, he had the ACL. They already have Sean Murphy out for 4 to 6 weeks. True. We know JT Realmuto is a premier catcher. Shortstop, they're running what's his name? Not Miguel Rojas.
Arcia.
Orlando Arcia. Like Trey Turner is incredible. And then at third base, Austin Riley's great, but we haven't as big of Austin Riley fans are. And I don't know, Josh, if you know Williams 5 things of how he loves a MLB player. It's like they either go to Vandy, local product, good defense. That's just what it is. But I mean, I just prefer, the outfield too. The Phillies outfield's better. Jerkson Profar or Castellanos?
You don't know what Profar you're going to get. Last year Profar you would take Profar for sure. Right. And then this year, I don't know.
And then Michael Harris is great. I'm a big Michael Harris guy, but right now Michael Harris is an elite defender, just like Brandon Marsh. It's just what bat's going to be better, and it's like picking between him and Marsh. So
I'm a big Brandon Marsh guy.
Yeah. So give me the Phillies, hands down. Okay.
And then I think rotation, we probably take the Phillies over everybody in the division, right?
Yeah. Bullpen.
This is where the Mets might have.
Who do the Mets have in the bullpen? They have Edwin Diaz, who is still recovering from his whatever Achilles surgery. He wasn't lights out. I mean, the one thing about the Phillies is they have to get that Jordan Romano from 2 years ago.
Right.
And if not, hey, they have to go acquire a closer, and this is where I think they could go get a Kenley Jansen mid-year from the Angels.
Go get Ryan Helsley from St. Louis. He's a free agent.
Yeah, but the thing about Kenley Jansen is probably a cheaper cost.
Yeah.
Than Ryan Helsley. Yeah. Helsley, you're probably going to give a lot more up. So, and Kenley Jansen has.
To answer the question, though, I think the bullpens are kind of the weakness for all three of these teams. Honestly,
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And the thing I'm curious specifically with the Phillies bullpen is, last year it was Strom, Hoffman, and Kerkering, who were all really, really good that you felt incredibly confident every time they took them out. Obviously, Hoffman's gone. That was the first season Kerkering had done that. Young, you would expect him to continue that, but there's no guarantees there. And you bring in Romero to be Hoffman's replacement. Is that actually what is going to happen here? So there are some question marks. I feel like this bullpen is in between 23 and last year, where it's closer to last year, but I'm just not convinced it's going to be quite as good.
Yeah, I think we're in alignment there. I still think it's probably the slightly edges the other two teams in the division, though. I think the Nationals could actually have a decent division or decent bullpen.
They probably have the best bullpen because they have the guy with hair. Crap, he just signed Finnegan.
Yeah,
Finnegan. They got the other guy. They got the two, but they got my guy Nabil Chris Matt. I'm a big believer in him. He's a NRI non-roster invite, but all in all, I like this team, and I kind of feel like you have to go through that heartbreak to mature and become a better person, and I think that's the Phillies. You have to go through those losses and failures in life to get to the mountaintop, and that's why I like the Phillies. I think Josh, I don't know if you've read the document, if you had access. I think the best case scenario is that they win the World Series.
Of course.
And
okay.
And the worst case scenario is that these older guys like the Schwarbers, Realmuto, Castellanos don't get it together. Maybe one or two pitching injuries. And, with how competitive the NL is with the Diamondbacks, Mets, they miss the playoffs. Or
Yeah.
do
Even
how
just
do we
that,
feel about
yeah, even just that division. I could absolutely see a world where that any of those three teams finish third. Is that enough to make the playoffs? Probably, because you look across and those three teams are probably better than everybody else that's not going to win a division. But right, there could be two. I mean, between the Padres, the Diamondbacks out west, assuming the Dodgers are going to do what the Dodgers do, there are the Brewers and the Cardinals are obviously in a bit of a rebuild kind of thing, but they're also the Cardinals. The Cubs could bounce back. I do think there are ultimately going to be three teams that make it from the East. But yeah, I wouldn't be floored if they missed the playoffs. I wouldn't be floored if they won the World Series.
Don't sleep on the Reds too, with the Terry Francona Reds too. Do not sleep on them. And then it'll be an interesting year in the NL. I think we can all agree, as we said in prior, that the NL in general has gotten better. There's very few teams in the NL that you can just look at on paper and be like, they got worse.
So, I mean, it's a meat grinder. Yeah. I'm so glad the Yankees are in the American League. The Yankees would be like the third or fourth best team in the National League. So,
would the Yankees even win a division? I think the only division the Yankees would win would be the Central. And they would still make it interesting. They would still make knowing the Yankees. Not that they're better than all the team talent wise, but just watching them play the Central Block. If you heard our terminology, the Central Block, like they make those games interesting. Like those Royals and Guardians games were all interesting last year. So, yeah.
Can I throw one more thing out there?
Let's hear it.
Go ahead.
I find this is what I've been thinking about a lot. Do you know how many times since 22, right? Kind of when this actually started, when they got to the World Series and became quote unquote contenders. Do you know how many times the Phillies have won a series as a higher seed with home field advantage?
So this counts 2022?
Yes. 22, 23, 24.
23. Who did they play in the DS?
Who did they play in the DS? Was it the Braves?
They played Atlanta in 22 and 23.
Yeah, no, and the Braves won 123. They went berserk in 23. They were underseeded. The Phillies were the thing because Max Fried got piñataed, if I remember. And I remember so it was 22.
I'll say none. I'll say none because you're asking.
So it's one. It was the wild card series in 23 against the Marlins.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that series.
Right. Count that? Right.
That was the series that before the game one, they were interviewing Jazz Chisholm and he said, like, I'm him, I'm meant for these moments. And then he went like 0 for 8 in the series.
It was 2-0. The only series the only series they have lost as the lower seeded team without home field advantage was the 22 World Series to the Astros. They have not lost as a lower seeded team to an NL team, which is the part about this. And you and I have talked a little bit about this, William, that, you sent me that video last year joking about how the Dodgers were going to win 120 games and then they were going to run into the Phillies in the NLDS and turn into LeBron James Heat version, because that's to me the biggest reason for optimism is that for whatever reason they lose to teams they're not supposed to and they beat teams they're not supposed to. So if I would love for them to actually get a crack at the Dodgers, because I quietly feel kind of confident about it to the extent that you can going up against that team.
Does that have something to do with the fact that they're from Philadelphia and just the underdog mentality of that city?
I think it's probably got very much they're buying it, just like the Eagles too, right? That they very much, in the Union also, 76ers maybe not quite as much, but they definitely buy into this idea of, and I think that's where it's difficult last season, and this is also where I just can't stand, and we're going to go through this with the Eagles next season too, that it feels so different when you know that the expectations are there, both obviously for the players and from a fan perspective too, that you have to do everything perfect to achieve and reach the expectations where, okay, weird things happen, right? How many times have the Dodgers lost in the DS or the CS as the better team? A bazillion, right? Because it's just weird in baseball. happens and it's not fair, that's just the reality of the situation. But it's just weird to me that there seems to be some kind of rhyme or reason to this. I don't know why, but every time they play teams as the underdog, except for the Astros, they win. And they were certainly in that series, they just ended up not being able to kind of finish out those last couple games. But it's the weirdest part to me. But then, right, they played the Mets in the NLDS, and you go, oh, I really wanted the Brewers to win that series because I had a bad feeling because it made too much sense that they were going to lose to the Mets after having to play them a bazillion times and just right. But the Mets were the team last season.
Yeah, no, and I just have a good feeling that I think regular season, I think the Phillies are going to disappoint, quote unquote, maybe meaning like they'll be second in the division. Yep. They'll win like 94, 93 games, but be second. And then they'll get a good draw, or they'll just get a draw they'll make it. And I don't know. I get oddly more confident with the Phillies rotation than I am with the Dodgers rotation for some reason. I don't know.
Injuries.
I just get that weird. And I just don't trust Yamamoto, Sasaki, Ohtani, and the Glasnow and Snell rotation. And I don't know. I just feel like they have so many moving parts and so many roles that they have to define, where I kind of feel like with the Phillies, it's like, okay, your number one is Zach Wheeler. Your number two probably is Aaron Nola, in parentheses. Granted, like, it's Aaron Nola. He is getting up in age. And then from then you get a Ranger or a Sanchez, game 3. Or Luzardo if you're playing politics.
I think Sanchez at this point, in my head, has surpassed Nola as the number 2. But you also just kind of mix it up because you know what you're getting with Wheeler and you know what you're getting with Nola. So as long as you get 2 starts from both of them, I kind of like the idea of putting the lefty with the higher ceiling in between the two of them. Yeah, I'm right there with you, Luis. I kind of feel like they're not going to win the division, and I will go into the playoffs feeling like they have nothing to lose, and that's the best spot to be, and that's when they play their best baseball.
It's like Atlanta when they won the World Series. Like, I don't think won the World Series, they weren't even they didn't even win the division that year. I don't believe so. When they won in 24. No, sorry, 24 was 21.
2022, they won the division. They were 101 and 61. But I don't know. Who they played it kind of felt like the Astros were the favorite that year, and that's who they ended up beating in the World Series. All right. I mean, the number's 91.5 on the DraftKings. Not a sponsor, could be. Luis kind of just hinted there, but Luis, what's your pick? Then we'll do Doering. Then Luis, then me, then Doering. We'll let Doering go last.
So they won 95 last year, and like we've said, they're bringing back the same team. Not really any pieces were lost. The only big question probably is the back half of the bullpen, as we said with Jordan Romano. So going off that, I expect Bryson Stott to be great. I like Alec Bohm and Bryson Stott. I think they're two of the most underrated players in the majors. I think Alec Bohm gets a lot of stick, but I think they'll go be over that number.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to take a slight over. Slightly. I don't have them winning the division. I think it's going to be Atlanta this year. Atlanta or Philly. I don't think the Mets are winning. I think it's going to be between Atlanta and Philly. I'm going over. I think they win 92, 93, and then they're in the wild card series against. We'll see, but I'm going slight over. They're not going to get to. Was it 95 last year? 96 last year? I don't think they're going to get to. I don't think they're going to get to that number again.
I'll go slightly under and say it's 90 or 91.
Okay.
Slight. Okay, so we're still high on them. 90 wins or so. Playoffs for sure.
Because they were so good for so much of. Now, I guess the other part of this too is that between Real Muto, Turner, and Harper, you got, I think it was 365 games last year. So if they all play 140, then we're probably talking more in the 94, 95 range. It's not like they were perfectly healthy last season. But I do think a lot of things went right, and that I could just see them take the slightest step back because somebody gets hurt. Castellanos isn't good again. Bohm doesn't play at an all-star level. The bullpen takes a slight step back. You have to play a better Mets team a bazillion times. You got to play a better Atlanta team a bazillion times. I do think they're going to somewhere between 90 and 92.
Those are some good points. I didn't think about those 2 points. I mean, I'm not a big believer in the Mets this year. I'll just put it out there. I'm not a big believer in their pitching staff. I mean, we got into them yesterday in yesterday's preview. I'm not a big believer, as I said. But yeah, the Braves are going to be healthier and better. Healthy Acuna, Strider's healthy. I mean, everything went wrong for the Braves, and we'll talk about the Braves. They're our final podcast, so this is in 2 days. So,
can we say also, and I don't know if everybody believes in it, but they are the Mets, right? Like it's kind of like the Clippers. Like
they're the Jets. They're the Jets.
Like you're always. I don't care if you get Juan Soto. I don't care if you get Vlad Jr., you get Pete. Like it's the Yankees. The Yankees are always going to be the bigger team. People wear that New York Yankees hat in every single corner of the world. Like it's always the Yankees are always going to be the bigger brother.
It's a recognizable brand. That's the thing. That's what I said with Juan Soto. I'm like, I don't think it was a great financial system. Yeah, but I just think like from a branding perspective, that Yankee hat, like you see people that don't even baseball fans. You'll be seeing these Instagram influencers who don't even know a lick about baseball or anything with the NY or the LA, and that's New York. And for the facts are, for the golden age that they had in 2014 when they went to the World Series, they had Matt Harvey, Noah Syndergaard, 15 and Jacob deGrom. What came out of that?
The Austin Five. Juan Soto in a Yankees uniform for the next 15 years, he's infinitely more famous than Juan Soto in a Mets jersey for the next 15 years.
Yeah. And that was basically –
he could have been a Monmouth Park.
Yeah.
He didn't care about legacy. Didn't care about doing that. And I mean, the same thing. I think Philadelphia is one of those franchises that I think if you win in Philadelphia, you will be forever loved in the city. If you win on the Mets, like I just feel like, oh, you won on the Mets. It's different. It's like if you win in Philly, like right now, I'm going to remember more. This is a hot take. Bryce Harper Phillies and Bryce Harper Nationals. Yes, I remember his whole Sports Illustrated, the Phenom, whatever coming up. But I will remember Bryce Harper on the Phillies more than I will remember the Nationals teams.
I think we're probably already getting close to that point, if not already there.
I think we're there.
Just because of the postseason, and obviously he had some postseason success with the Nationals too, but I feel like he's already had more, right? This is the team he got to the World Series with, and he's got every opportunity for that to continue. And I'm right there with you on Soto, Luis. And we were texting about this when it happened, William, and also just the idea of playing in the American League.
Yeah.
Instead of inviting yourself to go into the NL East with those 2 other organizations, not to mention the Dodgers that you have to get through just to get to the World Series, where you've got Aaron Judge, you've got Garrett Cole, you got to feel pretty good about life. And there's also, the idea of being a Yankee just means something different in a positive way for you and your brand.
Look, I'm salty. Like I'm still upset that he didn't come back to the Yankees, but like there, you can think of any possible theory as to why. Like there's no other way to put it other than he went to the Mets because they gave him the absolute most money. It was $5-10 million, whatever, more than the Yankees.
Yeah.
Like he wanted, if the Mets offered him 3 more pennies, he would have gone to the Mets. Like that's how much. That's how I don't like to say it, but he was greedy, and fair enough. Look what happened to fair enough. Like he's getting unbelievable amount of money, but look what happened to Robinson Cano. At least Robinson Cano won a World Series on the Yankees, and even then, he was still forgotten and outcast when he went to Seattle. Same thing's going to happen to Juan Soto, except I think he's going to be a lot better than Robinson Cano was on the Mariners. But in terms of national relevance, it's going to be the same thing.
And also the thing about Soto thing, I think like that night, I think like even before then, there was just so many things, and it's just like I don't know. I think it's probably the biggest traderist. I think it's like top 5 trader decision sports, up there with like LeBron the decision.
I didn't. LeBron's number 1 or number 2. Number 1's KD, at least in American sports.
No, KD, whatever. But yeah.
I forgot what I was going to say.
I'm just saying, Juan Soto on the Mets. I mean, hey, he can go enjoy Clay Holmes being his number 1 starter in the playoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say I didn't like the way he handled kind of being Yankee at points throughout the season, like wearing the backwards hat in all these interviews and all the post-game stuff. The way, right after the World Series when he said, I'm available for all 30 teams, like, okay, yeah, he's gone. Like, come on. You don't say that after you just lost the World Series. It'll never come out. Maybe it'll come out 5-10 years from now, but I don't think the Yankees like Juan Soto in the locker room. I don't know if he's a good locker room guy. I sound like such a salty Yankee fan right now.
It's certainly there seems, I feel like there had to be something, and maybe it was just strictly the money, but it feels objectively, as somebody who didn't have a strong opinion on where Juan Soto landed between the two New York teams, I think that is a logical question to ask of exactly what led to him being part of the Yankees and then choosing not to be part of the Yankees in order to be part of the Mets.
You could have had Aaron Judge. I mean, he had a career because he had Aaron freaking Judge protecting him in the lineup. Now you got Pete, which is good, not Aaron Judge, or Mark Vientos.
Hey, let's not spoil tomorrow's podcast because I think that will be tomorrow's big ticker. We could probably get more comments from Josh on tomorrow's Yankee podcast because I think we got 2 overs and an under. Tomorrow is our Yankees preview. So I don't want to continue on this Juan Soto chat. We are doing the Phillies team preview. I think we are all very high on the Phillies this year. We all think they have the potential to win a World Series. Williams over, I'm over, Josh is under. Any closing remarks, Josh?
I've got one more thing to throw out there that might actually kind of be a good thing to end on. The other thing that I find, I'm interested how much you two buy into this. The other reason that I feel so good about this team in the postseason, and Max Kepler plays into this too, is they just have a bunch of dudes who hit home runs. And that is so important in the playoffs when you have as long as you have the rotation to go with it, and they do. And so I feel like it could potentially be as simple as, are they hot or not heading into the playoffs? Obviously, last year, a lot of their guys were in slumps. They couldn't hit. The men sent them home with a pitching staff that was nothing to write home about. The 2 years before, they were hot, and they nearly won a World Series and probably should have won a World Series. And so I feel like their ceiling is as high as any team in the league. If they're playing well, I still don't even feel that bad facing the Dodgers just because of how quickly they can change games and how quickly they can get a lopsided score up there because Schwarber hits a leadoff home run and then Turner doubles, Harper, and then, Bohm's up with a runner on second. They've already got 2 runs that inning, that kind of thing, that it can spiral really quickly. But they're so boom or bust that I'll take that from they're not the best team in baseball, so I'd rather have the high upside. But it can work against you. But I feel like they have a formula for postseason success that doesn't necessarily translate to winning 100 games in the regular season.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the home run. I think of a lot of big Yankee moments in the postseason last year. Giancarlo Stanton against the Guardians, Juan Soto, that huge home run against the Guardians. Volpe, the grand slam. Like you need those guys that come up in the moments and hit the big, either a hit or a home run. And I feel like a lot of these guys kind of have the clutch gene. Bryce Harper against the Padres, that opposite field home run that's kind of now iconic for the Phillies. Yeah, they got the postseason experience. They've been there. They got the scars. I feel like that maybe means a little bit more in basketball than it does baseball. But
it's a team sport, William. It's a team sport.
Baseball is a team sport, but I think it's the most individualistic team sport that there is. It's kind of a series of individual battles within a team sport.
But I disagree because think about it. This is probably the sport where the greatest bonds are made. If you think about all the dudes that after their careers, a lot of these guys are still friends and they have stories. I don't know, Josh. I know William will refuse to watch it, but I don't know if you watched the Boston Red Sox 2003 comeback where all those guys, like one of the biggest things was, they weren't the best team, but like they said, they had the boomer bust potential and they all really got along really well. And
they figured out the locker room. Yeah.
You're 162 days together.
More.
And that's out spring training that, you're away from your family. You see these people become your family. You were with them for about, I can't do math right now, but
like 8-9 months.
Yeah.
8-9 months. So you don't see that in basketball.
It's true. It's a grind. It is a grind.
And I'll wrap up with this. And we'll close it with this. I personally like the depth more in the Phillies lineup than the Dodgers lineup.
Right there with you.
It's been a question. That was the question on the Dodgers last year, and it didn't come back to bite them. Baseball is a weird sport where can win 120 games and lose in the DS. Like, it's just weird, man. Like, it's impossible to predict. So we're here on March 5th. Where we still have 8 months until the playoffs, 9 months, whatever, or 7 months. Yeah. Plenty of time. A lot of things are going to change. So Doering, it was great having you on. I think we'll definitely love to have you back on throughout the course of the season to talk some Phillies, maybe talk some soccer.
Excellent.
Got to give a shout out to Touchline Talk, Josh's podcast. Do a great job. Got some really good interviews on there. Some interesting people. I saw you had the, can't remember his name, but the guy from Nottingham Forest on a couple weeks ago. That was a really good one. So some good content. If you guys are into soccer, go check out Touchline Talk.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, anytime. Right. We love having you on.
All right.
William, where are we going tomorrow?
We got the Yankees, which this one's 51 minutes for the Phillies. The Yankees might be 3 times that. I don't know. But it's going to be interesting. But we're all pretty high on the Phillies this year. Doering, it was a pleasure. Luis, a pleasure as always. And we'll be back tomorrow with the New York Yankees. Until then, catch you guys next time. Peace out.